Hello, and welcome to the virtual Scandinavia House and today's book talk on collected works with the Swedish author and psychologist Lydia Sandgren. With moderator Emily Temple, she will discuss her compelling mystery and poignant bildungsroman about love, power, and art, and what leads us to make pivotal decisions that change the course of our lives. The book will be published or is published by Astra House on January 31st. And has been translated by Agnes Brome. So a big thank you to Astra House for helping make this event possible. This talk is being recorded and will be made available on our website, scandinavias.org, as well as our YouTube page. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section, and we'll get to them towards the end of the program. A link to where one can purchase the book will be added also to the chat function, or visit your local bookstore. Lydia Sandgren is a trained psychologist and lives in Gothenburg, Sweden, and Collected Works is her debut novel. Moderating today's talk is Emily Temple. She is the author of The Lightness, published by William Morrow in 2020, and the managing editor at Literary Hub. She earned an MFA in fiction from the University of Virginia, where she was a recipient of the Henfield Prize. She lives with her husband and daughter in upstate New York. So please welcome Lydia and Emily.
Thank you. Thanks, Kyle, and welcome, everyone. So I think we're just going to start by having Lydia read to us a little bit in English and in Swedish.
Yeah, we start with the English one, so you have a chance of understanding me. All right, I'll just find my copy here. No, I'm sorry.
I'll just hold it up for a visual.
Yeah, I thought I prepared so well, but here I lost my. It's always, I got this PDF file, and real books are always better. That's what I always say. Okay, here I got it. I love paper. So does actually Martin Berg, the one of the main characters in this book. And as we meet him for the first time, which I will read to you, he's about 50 years old, and his kids has moved out. He's alone in his apartment, and he's wondering what really has become of his life. So this is the first page of the novel. Martin Berg was on his back on the living room floor, hands folded over his stomach, stacks of paper all around him. Next to his head, a half-finished novel. By his feet, 25 years worth of napkin notes in big piles. His right elbow touching an anthology of promising writers born in the 60s, the only book he'd ever been published in. Next to his left elbow, several smaller stacks, each tied with a ribbon and labeled Paris in red marker. And scattered between his head and his elbows and his feet, papers, and more papers. Written in ink or pencil or typed on a typewriter with notes scribbled in the margins. Double-spaced computer printouts, crumpled and coffee-stained, smooth and shiny, some stapled, some held together with paper clips, others loose. The beginnings of short stories, essays, novel synopses, several attempts at plays, notebooks with covers worn after a lifetime in the inside pockets of his jacket, piles of letters. He'd pushed the coffee table aside to make room. Okay, and I'm going to read the same paragraph for you, or the beginning of it at least, in Swedish, so you get an idea of what it sounds like in the original. Martin Berg låg på vardagsrumsgolvet med händerna knäppta över magen. Runt omkring honom var högar av papper utspridda. Vid hans huvud fanns en halvfärdig roman. Vid hans fötter drivor av 25 års samlade servettanteckningar. Höger armbåge snuddade vid en antologi med lovande 60-talister. den enda bok han någonsin blivit publicerad i. Intill vänster armbåge var flera mindre buntar placerade, var och en hopknuten med snöre och märkt Paris med rödpenna. Well, that's it. On and on it goes for 700 pages or so.
Thank you. It's so interesting to hear it in the original, which of course it's, you know, I wish I could understand it because it's just, well, actually, I'm going to ask my translation question later. Let's start at the beginning.
Yes.
Why don't you start by telling us, just for those who may not have read the book yet, just a little bit about what it's about, if you can summarize such.
Oh, that's the hardest question, Emily. You started with the hardest one. Like Kyle said in the introduction, it's a kind of bildungsroman, a coming-of-age novel with centers around Martin, his best friend Gustav, and Martin's girlfriend/wife Cecilia. And Cecilia disappears. This is no spoiler. We get to know it from the beginning. And she disappears when their kids are about 7 and 3 years old or something, and she never comes back. Never a word from her. And we get to follow Martin and Gustav and Cecilia when they are young in Gothenburg. Gustav becomes an artist, Martin a publisher, and Cecilia is an academic. And we also meet their grown-up daughter, Rakel, when she tries to find out what actually happened to her mother and who this woman is, because she only meets her via the portraits that Gustav has painted of her and the stories that Martin tells. So she kind of tries to find out who the story of her mother. And voila, there we go.
That's a very good summary.
Thank you.
I wonder, so many books these days, it seems, have a missing woman at the center, but not at all in the way that you. Do you think of it as a mystery? Do you think of it as, you know, or what is the overarching shape for you in that way?
Absolutely kind of mystery, because for me, writing the book, which took me 10 years, it started out with the idea of a missing mother, a mother who left her family and her kids. And I did not know why she left. So it started out like this kind of enigma or puzzle for me to work out. And in the beginning, that is like the 3 or 4 first year of writing, I thought I needed to have it all figured out. Like I needed all the little pieces of the puzzle and just piece them together in a fancy way. But then I found out that writing the book was more like trying to find out myself, or understanding rather myself. The same question that Rakel has: why did she leave, and who was she really? So it really started like a kind of mystery, a psychological mystery, which I wanted to solve, and I'm not sure I managed really. But well, that's another question, I think.
Yeah, and well, I mean, this is what I was going to ask you too, about where it began. So it began with Cecilia.
Yeah, and actually it began with Cecilia and her disappearance, but it also began with the idea of having a middle-aged man in the center of the novel. I was very clear on this very early, which is rather strange because I was 20 years old. And I tried to write. Rakel is kind of the same age as me, and she was, like me, a psychological student. So we shared a lot of, we were kind of in the same places and in the library and etc., etc. But writing about Rakel was always so hard. I didn't feel free, really. Actually, I didn't until I thought I had finished the manuscript, and my publisher told me that, well, you should kind of work a little bit more on Rocco. And then I was so much older than her, so it was easier to write. But then, being 20, writing about another 20-something was hard and not so fun for some reason. And I found out that writing about Martin, especially Martin when he's young, was so much easier, and I could kind of hide myself in him and his friends. And so what started out like a kind of cliche middle-aged man who was like, I wanted him to be like mediocre and like a little failed, a bit of a failure. Actually, he grew. Writing the book, he became more of a real person, and actually in the end, the one that I like best of all the ones in this book. I really miss him from time to time.
Ah, I miss him too. This is the kind of book, I think I read it somewhere, and I completely agree that you feel by the end of it that all the characters are your friends, and you wish you could call them.
Yeah.
And find out what's going on.
I had this horrible experience in Paris, like it's 10 years ago or something. I went there partly to do some research, and I was walking around the Saint-Germain-des-Prés, and I realized they don't exist. They are not here. It's only me, and I'm all alone. It was horrible. So they're kind of like fantasy friends or something like you had when you were a child.
It makes sense if you spend 10 years working through something like this and you really grow with them. And not only, does the reader grow with them as they read, but you've done so much more growing with them. So
yeah. Now they are all yours.
Yes.
You can do what you want with them. They're not mine anymore.
So, I mean, I'm sure everyone asks you this, but what is your origin story as a writer? I mean, you're a practicing psychologist, which means, I'd say, gives you a leg up in some ways, because I can read this and say, well, she knows what she's talking about with in terms of the human condition. But I also, it seems like it would take up a lot of time. So how did you decide you wanted to embark on this?
Well, I was young enough not to know better, actually. I did not know what I was doing. And in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't. But I've always been writing since I was a little kid. And basically, since I started to learn how to write and read, it was always such a joy for me inventing stories and reading. And I had this like fantasy life going on. And it was really very close to playing. And like you invent a play and you share it with your siblings or your friends, and you write a story and you can like tell it to someone. So it started out like children's play for me, I think. And I was only about 10, 11, 12 when I started to write school plays, and I was really into fantasy and science fiction. So when I was 12, I embarked on this epic fantasy novel, which I forced my classmates to listen to when I read it aloud. I finished a new chapter every week, and I had them to listen to this. A horrible thing to do, actually. And I just, kept going. And when I was about 20, I'd written some short stories. I had written a diary. I had written a lot of pop songs and stuff. And I thought, well, it's about time I start on the big novel. And so I did. And I had absolutely no idea how to write, except for I had read so much. So, when you read, you kind of get the the stories in you. It's like you imitate or mimic in the beginning. I have this paragraph that sounds very, I can tell that I've been reading Nabokov writing this. And okay, now I've been reading Jonathan Safran Foer, for example. So for a couple of years, I had to, work through that before finding my own way of expressing myself.
You said pop songs. Are you also a musician?
Not anymore, I wouldn't say. But when I was younger, I played the piano and the guitar. And I was in music school, so I almost played more music than writing, I think, until the age of 20, basically. And then I had to kind of choose. I know I couldn't do both things. And I choose literature because I'm better at writing than at playing.
It's interesting. It's, this novel is so much about art and different kinds of art and the way that people relate to it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of readers of this novel are writers, and you really, hit us where it hurts with Martin's story. I was like, oh, rude. I'm being attacked.
I kind of thought that's going to be me, lying on the floor, surrounded by manuscripts.
Yeah. Yeah. But you also write about painting and about translation. And yeah, so I'd love to know how you approach writing about art. You're making art about art. And if it seems like it's a big part of your life, and it's a big part of all of your characters' lives too.
Yeah, actually, I think Gustav, the painter in the novel, he's so extremely talented, and I'm a little bit jealous of him. And I think maybe he's my my way of living out the fantasy of being a true genius. Because I had to work kind of hard learning how to write. I rewrote and rewrote and rewrote time after time. That's why it took me so long. And I've always had this urge to express myself in some way. I've been, as I told you, I've been playing music, but I also did a drawing and painting when I was younger. And it was also kind of play, but I realized I'm not good enough. I don't have it in my hands. Good musicians, they have the music in them. And some people can paint just, they have this technical skill, which makes them able to convey their pictures into this fantastic visual artwork that they can share with the world. And I understood that I will never be able to do this. But I think maybe I can write it. So Gustav's paintings, they are pretty, I describe them a lot, and I have this very clear picture of his artwork. And it was a big joy for me making it up. What does he paint? What are his influences? How does he learn? How would I do it if I could? So maybe it's just my own fantasy of being really, really good at painting, because I have this love for the visual arts. And for me, it's kind of beyond words, if it makes any sense. Watching a painting, it can be a really deep experience, but I don't really know how to put it into words. I have to, try and work. Collected works, I think, is the fruit of that process in some way.
It's usually you read about art in novels and it's either very vague or maybe this is just me, but I'm like, that doesn't sound that good. You're telling me that's good?
Yeah. Is it really? I don't
Really, I don't know. But this, I thought it was very convincing. I can see the portraits of Cecilia very clearly. And it was really, I think a lot of times writers write about painters because it feels like it's analogous in some way, but it's not, it's far enough away.
Rachel Cusk taught us
Yes.
this. Yes.
Yes, exactly. It's sort of like a little get out of jail free card. It's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
it's the painter.
It's not at all the same thing. Rachel Cusk is absolutely right in this. It's different ways of using language or using symbols. And yeah, Gustav, he couldn't be a writer. He wouldn't have, he's like, he don't use words that way. I don't think he could express his feelings in words, but he can in paintings. Sorry, I interrupted you because
No, not at all.
I'm enthusiastic about Rachel Cusk.
No, you're absolutely right. No, of course, Gustav couldn't be a writer, but Martin couldn't be a painter.
No, exactly. Absolutely not. Not only because he lacks technical skill, but he doesn't see the world that way. Actually, another novelist who did this very good is Siri Hustvedt. She wrote about a painter or an artist in, I think it's The Blazing World is the name of the novel. And she kind of invented, you got the feeling that she invented a whole oeuvre of this artist. And
it is sort of the ultimate fantasy for writers to have, because there is something so appealing about having a physical product in that way, when you're spending hours and hours sort of just going into your computer, and in the end you might get a finished product, but it's different from being able to look at the canvas as it develops day after day. I find it so appealing.
Yeah, absolutely. I did this and now it's finished. And when you sit with a manuscript and you write and you don't even know, am I going to throw this away? Maybe this is a false lead. This doesn't lead anywhere. I had characters in this novel which I just, oh no, they don't fit there. I have to take them away. And so it's so much time, and you don't know until you're ready that it's finished. And so now I'm writing the second novel now, and I feel every day, oh my God, is this, how is this going to work out? And this, I don't know. And it was the same with the collected works for so many years. And you have to be really, really single-minded and stubborn to come through with it.
Do you remember when you knew it was done?
Yes, very clearly. I had decided, because nobody read it while I was writing it. I didn't know anyone in the publishing world. I had no contact with publishers or editors or agents or anything. A chapter here and there, some of my friends read, but nothing consistently. So I was basically alone, and I felt that the more I worked on the manuscript, the bigger the whole thing was for me, because I was going to send it in to submit it to a publisher, and they could say yes or no. And if they said no, it was 10 years of work for nothing. So I decided, okay, I could keep on going with this forever and ever, but I need to just have an ending for myself. So I'm going to work through the manuscript from the beginning to the end, methodically, and it's going to take as long as it takes, and then I'm sending it in. So I just worked from page 1 to the last scene, and when I was done, I was done. And then I sent it. And I remember when I had done it, I just sank down below the desk like this in deep shame. And I was thinking, oh my God, Lydia, what have you done? They are going to laugh their asses off at this. It's crazy, crazy person, they will think. What has she done? And for 5 weeks, I was just waiting for some kind of answer, and I knew it was going to take time, because you always hear it takes months and months and months, and they never answer and they never answer. So I kind of prepared myself on the big no. And then I got the sweetest email from my publisher. And that was the story of the real, like when the manuscript or the pile of paper became a real book for me, actually. And then I worked it through again and again. So I've written the last page a couple of times.
And you always think it's like you get that yes, and then you're like, it's done. And then they say, but
well, maybe you could consider, and I mean, that's a really that's a big part of the work, actually. So I think if you're not up to working and reworking, it's maybe novels isn't the thing you should be writing.
poems, they're short anyway.
Yes. Haiku, 3
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And now, you know, it has just been translated. It's just been published in its English translation. And I wonder what that was like for you. Did you, because you obviously also speak English, and did you have a hand in the English translation? And what was that process like? Because it's almost like a whole another book in that, you know, when it's translated.
Agnes did a wonderful job. So I haven't had any not much comments, or except for this is great. This is what I would have been writing if I could write in English. So it was really a bizarre feeling, actually, reading it, and it's like another book, but it's also so deeply familiar to me. And like there's a voice or a kind of tone which is very close to the Swedish. I think it's a kind of funny book. There's humor in it, and there's this slight irony, but in a warm, sweet way, which Agnes has captured very beautifully. And of course, there's a lot of details, like mostly facts, like, well, this word associates to this, and what do you mean by this? And it's been I enjoy working with translators, because they have so many interesting questions. And some of the translators, they don't ask anything. And I wonder, but oh my God, what did you do with this and this and this and this and this? Because I realized also I make my own words up. There's a lot of like in jokes that nobody really understands, but maybe me. And there's also a couple of like, especially in dialogues, when they're talking to each other, there's kind of things referring to very typically Swedish events, or something that you cannot know if you're not living in Sweden in 2012. So So I'm really, really impressed by Agnes and all the other translators who has like given another form or another language to this. I couldn't have done it myself. It must be really hard, I think, translating. Cecilia in the book, she's a translator. I think she's also, and Rakel tries to, like walking in her mother's footsteps, she starts to translate herself. And I'm really fascinated by it. I never tried it. So I think that's maybe my way of living out my fantasy of translating.
It's true. And it's also translation as a vehicle for this very important discovery.
Yes.
For her. That it feels like, and again, this is why I think of the translation in the book as its own art form, because it's opening a door that may change her whole life.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to ask you about the end because I'm sure there are people who have not read the book yet. So I will
we'll leave it to them.
Behave myself. But I wondered, you know, and I obviously without reading it in the original, I always, but in the English, there are so many beautiful sentences and so many really lovely descriptions without sort of delving into the over Nabokovian fancy prose style necessarily. And so I wonder how you approach the sentence level, how you think about sentence craft. Is it important to you? Do you think about the sound? Do you think about the image? How does it, just in that most minute way, how do you relate to the writing?
I'm really glad you're asking me that, Emily. Nobody in Sweden ever did, because I think a lot about sentences and a lot about rhythm. I wanted, actually, I picked up something from an interview with Donna Tartt when she was being interviewed about, I think it was The Goldfinch. And I think she said that, well, if I'm going to write this very long novel and expect people to read it, I must write sentences that they are beautiful in themselves, but you'd also have to be able to read the book kind of like fast, at a fast pace. So I have discovered during this 10 years of learning how to write. My language is kind of, there are some length in the sentences, and they are also, in Swedish, they are often kind of complicated, like lots of commas and parentheses and stuff going on in the sentence. But I was I've been very aware of the readable quality of it, that you have to be able to read it and read it aloud without stumbling. And I also had a method of checking this out, which was like, if I could read with my eyes like moving at a steady pace like this, it was a good page. But if I started to like hop around with my gaze like this, I knew something was wrong. Because if you don't follow the sentence in a way that makes it almost like you hear it. So I wanted to write in such a manner that you could hear the words and see the pictures. I think I'm a rather visual kind of writer. I have these clear pictures myself. So I always try to find the right sentence and the right words to like translate the picture I have in my head to words. And that's a big and important part of this work, is like cutting stuff out. Everything unnecessary has to be left out. And there are, I love words. So I always have too many words. I have to, clean it up a little. And I also had another of my like kind of aesthetic starting points was actually, I told you I'm a pianist. I was a pianist really before I was a writer. And when I was about around 20, I listened a lot to Bruce Springsteen. For a year, I listened to nothing but Bruce Springsteen. I worked also as a postman, so I had this music in my ears, day in, day out with Bruce Springsteen. It was lovely. And I especially enjoyed Roy Bittan, who's playing the piano in the E Street Band. And I had this idea that I wanted to write in a way similar to how Roy Bittan plays the piano. So I strived for a style similar to his piano playing, if that makes any sense. And there's this kind of epic and fluent feel. It's kind of big, but all very delicate. So that was my goal, like my aesthetic goal, when I tried to find my own voice and way of writing.
I love that. And I think you nailed it.
Thank you. I was thinking maybe I should send this book to him. I don't know if he likes to read novels.
I think if you included a note with that explanation saying, this is what I tried to write to your piano playing, he would at least be interested.
Yeah, I think so. I'll see if someone can get me his address. In Sweden, it's easy. You can just Google, because Sweden is so small a country, so you can always find people. But America is it's much more complicated.
It's true, and people are, they don't want to be found.
Yeah,
you can hide here.
Maybe, especially if you're like world famous rock star.
If you're super famous, yeah. I mean, I think that it does do exactly that. It is epic, and it is, the sentences are beautiful, but not in a way that you stop and are confused. Do you have, I just wonder this because of how I write, which is similar in that I have to cut. Do you have a graveyard file of everything you cut? Do you?
Yes.
And how big is it?
Such a huge graveyard, Emily. I revisit it sometimes, and I always, there's a reason I cut this out. It wasn't as good.
Yeah.
It better stay in the graveyard.
You ever resurrect things? Is it all, were you right every time?
Sorry?
Do you ever resurrect things, or were you right every time?
Yeah, I resurrect. It happens. And then maybe sometimes I kind of put it to the side and I try to rewrite it again and compare and see if it gets better or if it's the same. And sometimes I find myself when I reread, like now when I read a book, I can sometimes think, it would be really great if I did this, or if I wrote that. And then, okay, here it comes. So mostly I work with it so many times, I find like the best way of putting it, I think.
Yeah. Since we're on this craft path, forgive me, this is like a nitty-gritty craft question, because I personally struggle with remembering where all of the pieces go when I'm working on something big. And this book there's so much going on. There's different characters, there's different timelines. And so as a practical matter, I wonder how you manage the size and the shape. Did you have, one of those conspiracy boards with the strings connecting all the different characters?
I tried that one. I love these craft questions. I could talk about it for hours. I tried a lot. I had, for a period, I had like written out handwritten like post-it notes, which I posted on my wall. But I changed so much all the time. I could never keep up with the post-it wall. And actually, I have a very, very good memory. And that's due to my work, I think. I've been like training it up. I had, I don't take notes after sessions, and I have a lot of clients, so I have to remember everything. And when I was in school, my teacher, my supervisor told me that, well, after each session, you write it all from the beginning to the end, everything you said in the right order. And I thought, oh my God, this is fucking, it's impossible. How could anyone remember this? And of course, you don't remember a 50-minute session word to word, but I really tried, and you get a couple of pages. And doing this, it's kind of way of starting to listening, or like, and arranging all these facts in your memory. I got used to it, and I think I had a huge, it's been very important for me writing collected works, because as you said, it's so many characters and plot lines and everything. I like that all those little details. Also, when I wrote this book, I did not have children, so it was kind of my own private little dollhouse. And now I have a kid, which takes some of my time and my like brain capacity. And so we'll see how that will work out actually for the next novel, because it's you have to like work on your memory technique almost. It's how do you do?
Well, this is it. I have a terrible memory, so I have to reread drafts from the beginning to even remember what is in it, because I lose track of what is still there and what got cut. So I'm always reading from the beginning, which just takes me a long time. So whenever I want to change any element, it's almost, I have to start from the beginning again. So, okay, memory test. I need to work on the memory.
But I think maybe I also, at the end, I tried working with an Excel file, and I put all the columns and what happens where. But it was too complicated. I'm too bad at, Excel. So it didn't work out. But maybe you could try that. Like have a column for each chapter.
Yes. Yeah.
I heard about writers doing this.
It seems like Excel is like meant for numbers, and so, but yeah, I mean, that's what I need to do.
True.
Do you have a favorite section? I know you said Martin is now your favorite character. Is there a favorite timeline? Is there a favorite place? Strikes you?
Yeah, I've always liked the chapter when Martin and Cecilia they have a small baby, Elis. He's like a couple of months old, and he's screaming all the time, and they have a really tough time, and they go to Cecilia's parents' house in the countryside, and she's really depressed, just lying around up in her bed, trying to learn ancient Greek. And Martin he's kind of 35-ish, my age now, and he's like managing his publishing house, and he's like wandering around. And I don't know why I like this chapter so much, but I think it's nothing big happens. It's no huge drama, but it really happens a lot at the same time. and everybody is there in this section. Rakel as a child, and Cecilia not at her best, and really in a rather tragic position in life, I think. And Cecilia's parents, they are two crazy people, but I had such great fun writing about Cecilia's family and her brother. She's got this brother who's a lunatic, and he has all those crazy ideas. And it's and Martin, he's like walking around there. They are so eccentric, and what are those people? Oh my God. And I could really like, well, I had such fun writing it, although it's kind of dark.
It seems like a core joy for you is inventing characters and then finding out what happens to them, or finding just following them.
Yes.
Which is so, I mean, it really comes out because in the work too, as you get so attached to them because they do feel so layered and so, this is a weird thing to say, but cared for.
Yeah, that's not, it makes me happy to hear, because I really care for them. And I don't know if there's a better word than character. In Swedish, karaktär has a little like mechanical sound to it. Not really the same in English. It's more like a bigger ease to it in English, actually. But in Swedish, it's kind of mechanical and a little bit hard talking about them as characters. I would say like persons, or novel persons, the persons in the novel. And I don't, as I said before with Martin, I had this idea of what he was going to be like, and then started writing about him. I found out that there was much more and a whole other things than I thought from the beginning. So as a writer, I don't really, for me, believe in like figuring them out before I start. Like, he's going to be like this and she's going to be like that, and Gustav is the big genius and blah blah blah. But they have to come alive while writing them, and in all those little details, that people do, and you can't tell if it's good or bad. It can be both, and you get annoyed with them, and oh no, why did you do that? You're so stupid. I wanted all those this quality to come alive.
It does too, Martin. I knew. Well, again, I won't give anything away.
Yeah. Why are you doing this? Stop it!
Please stop it. It's true. No, and I wanted to say that scene with that section with, and after I say this, I will ask for audience questions because it's already 1:49 here.
Yeah.
But yes, that was so visceral, and it was also the moment where it's almost like I didn't believe she was going to disappear, and then once she was there in bed, I was like, oh, I believe I can see that she's like, it felt like the beginning of the end in this way that no other part had felt like to me. So that part stuck out to me as well. And I also read it with a screaming baby in my house. So it was very evocative, and it just exactly how that feels to have a baby that's screaming, and it's the worst thing in the world, but there's nothing to do except to go through it, and it will end. I mean, it's really, I also remember that section as being really wonderful.
Yeah.
And
dark.
Yes, it's true. Yeah. But okay, so yes, so Q&A section. If you have a question, please ask it in this Q&A. I see there's already one in here. Speaking of, Davi asks, speaking of finding your own way of writing, could you tell us a milestone, insights, or some events that made you be sure about your style or the way that you felt comfortable in words to convey yourself?
Well, not a particular milestone. I think it wasn't like it was, a moment when I realized, but rather more like a period of time since I used my method is like writing something and then I erase everything that I don't like or that doesn't like have a good rhythm. There's no swing in it, and everything that didn't work out. And but there was always like one or two sentences which like, okay, I like this. This is a good sound to it. I don't want to change this. So I could like erase sentence after sentence, but as long as it being a couple of paragraphs that I wanted to keep, I could like use them like building stones for the next page or next paragraph. And when I had read them time after time, I became slightly more and more sure of the how do you say this, like this, it holds, like it's steady enough. I can build something on this. And I think that happened like 3 or 4 years into the process. Actually, it was there from the beginning. I shouldn't be lying to you. It was there. For example, one example is the title of the novel, Collected Works, Samlade Verk, in Swedish. Because I wrote that as a title, like this could be a title, Samlade Verk, very, very early. And I knew this is it. And I never wanted to change it. And I had this very particular feeling of certainty. This is right, like it struck a chord inside of me. And also some sentences or scenes or kind of atmospheres in the books, they strike this chord, and then I know, okay, this is right. And I learned how to trust that kind of inner sound, if it makes any sense.
Collected Works, I'm so interested that was there from the beginning, because it is, in a way, it's a really daring title for a novel.
Yeah, but I had hubris. I was, I had like, how hard can it be? I've always been writing. Like, I have no problem with my self-confidence. I have to like pull myself down to earth sometimes. And writing this book surely did it, because it was really hard. But I did not know that from the beginning. Yeah, it's a daring time. It's really cocky. Like, it was also a kind of joke. People could ask me, what are you writing? Well, I'm writing on my collected works. So
do you think did you write toward it? So you knew it was going to be collected works, and then did you feel like having decided on the title at the beginning changed what you wrote, or led you had sort of like a signpost to go toward?
Yeah, I think I collected works is kind of, it captures the theme and the motives of what I wanted to write about, but I did not really have the words yet myself. But it's kind of like summing up your life. Okay, this is what it became. And I think that was my intention. Even I did not really understand it, or I understood like half. Only I was halfway to understanding it when I decided on the title and when I embarked on the novel. But I had a strong sense of it's a kind of existential theme, I think. Like, what do you actually do with your life? And I had read a lot, I was really into French philosophy. So I had read a lot of Sartre and like, oh, well, what do you do with your life and what does it make you? All those actions, what kind of person do you become in your dealings with life, kind of.
And this is the question that all of the characters are really asking themselves.
Yeah.
Here's another question from Karen. Can you tell us about what you're writing now?
Short answer is no. Long answer is, well, I want to write a little bit more about like love relationships. So there's art and more about music in this new book. It's a conductor in the center of it, and all sorts of musicians. And I will be focusing more on the romantic love and like marriage, love between grown-ups. I think collected works, there's a lot of love in it, obviously, but it's very much like being the story of being a child to someone and being friends and growing up. It's, as I said, a coming of age novel. So the next one is more, well, what happens when you've come of age? When you're through with that part, what's the next chapter in life? So that's what I'm working on now.
I wonder how does it feel to be embarking on a second novel after 10 years of one novel?
Every day, I ask myself, what are you doing? What are you doing? Do you really have to do this all over again? Must it be so long? Must it be all those characters? Can't you write something shorter? So will this ever end?
It's true, you can trick yourself. It's so I am also trying to work on a second novel, and it's so much harder because the first time you don't know what's going to happen to you, and the second time you know.
Yeah, you're kind of protected by that like youthful innocence. How hard can it be? And when you don't, if you're going out for a run and you don't know how long you're going to run, if somebody says it's just 10 more meters, 20 more meters, 1 kilometer, then you can always, keep on going. But now I know how long this run is going to be. And it's a lucky thing I'm stubborn as hell, because I will need it.
The best quality for a writer to have. Well, I guess we're right at an hour, and that seems like that was a good question to end on. And there's no more in here. So thank you so much for sharing this with us and for talking to me today.
It's lovely. I had so much fun. I've been laughing and making all those little that's a good sign. I had a really good time.
I did too, and I'm gonna hold up the book again so everyone can know what they're buying.
The book is out on Tuesday, the 31st of January. So you can pre-order it if you can't wait, or wait till Tuesday to buy it at your local bookstore. So thank you, Emily, for moderating such a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Lydia, for the wonderful book and joining us tonight or this afternoon. And thank you, audience, for listening. And we're doing both virtual and in-person events now at Scandinavia House. So we have a lot of literary events coming up. So do visit the website, scandinavius.org, to find out everything that we have on offer. And again, thank you, everyone. And I hope everyone has a good day. Bye.
Bye.